Good evening, cyber bird watchers, and welcome back to another exciting day of Let's Watch Netrunner. We are recording March 17th of 2020. The coronavirus is still rampant and changing everyone's schedules, but aside from that, things are good. If you have the virus, of course, my sympathies go out for you. If you don't, well, have fun staying inside. It's all I ever do anyway, so it doesn't really change too much in my lifestyle. I suppose should be thankful. Let's swap over and see what we can find. Oh, we don't want a calculator. See what we can find on Jinteki.net this evening. First game of the night seems to be Krim versus Wayland. We have Laws. Looks like Bird Laws versus SSO. Doing normal SSO things. Law seems to want to play Paul's Cafe with birds. So some kind of res scenario going on there, taking advantage of Law's ability, gaining 2 credits the first time each turn a corp reses a card. Diversion of funds going into HQ. We'll see an enquete, an Enquête resed on HQ. Enquête's a little bit like Afshar, except it doesn't have to be placed on HQ, but it doesn't gain that runner can only break 1 subroutine bonus until it has 3 advancement tokens on it. Now, it is a barrier, so Laws goes ahead, uses Paul's Cafe's ability to install Saker, gets on through there, and diversion of funds for 5 credits, bringing our corp friend down to 0 credits. Now, Laws is going to take his luck here on the remote server. Now, if that was Space Ice, it would, of course, be res, but whatever that ice is, Corp doesn't have the money to use it, and so the first face-up agenda, in this case Hollywood renovation, goes over to the runner. Now, that is a big deal. SSO kind of lives or dies based on whether or not that first agenda they get stays on the table, or or whether it goes over to the side of the runner. Personally, I feel that Criminal has the best advantage in this matchup just because they tend to run bypass effects, as well as they tend to be kind of the early hard-hitting runner comparatively. Now, of course, that's not true in every scenario, but using the ability to steal SSO's money in correlation with the fact that this luckily was not a Space Ice is going to give that first agenda over to Laws, setting him up quite nicely in this matchup because now SSO can't fire their abilities. They spent the turn before this one clicking up for credits. Looks like this on the current turn they just took, they installed a new piece of ice on R&D. Who knows if that's actually going to help. Laws, meanwhile, continues to host things on Paul's Cafe, in this case Golden. And DJ Fenris sees Arena Roja, increasing the res cost of ice by another credit, further causing just a point of pain in SSO's life. Now, a manual advance of the 2 ice on the centrals, 2 pieces of ice on the centrals, is used to set up mass commercialization. I don't know if that was useful or not. And the reason for that is because SSO's ability will not work on ice that already has advancement tokens on it. Now, follow-up from Laws is a diversion of funds back into HQ, using Saker to not only break Enquête, but also de-res it, getting ready for that Saker play in future HQ runs, considering that it is now going to cost the Corp an extra credit to res that piece of ice, on top of Laws getting paid 2 credits to do it. 5 credits leaves the Corp's accounts, as well as going into Laws' accounts, followed up by a bravado run on a piece of ice that he knows the Corp just can't res. And that is pretty sad. He's gonna sad for the Corp, of course. He is gonna get into HQ and see an Ash. However, he just decides to leave the Ash in there and gains his 7 credits from bravado, a net only of 5, I believe. 4. So a hedge fund's worth of money. Now, luckily, SSO was left over with 2 credits to their name, so they were able to get a hostile takeover out on the table, gaining them 5 more credits back. So they are in the game as far as money goes. The big problem is that bad publicity is really going to help Laws, because he's only ever really going to need to break one piece of ice in any run. The way he's setting this up is he's going to be running these run and derez effects. So more than likely, the Corp will only ever be able to afford one piece of ice on any given run. Now, the advantage, or the silver lining, is that we have 2 copies of Diversion of Funds in the heap, which does mean that the Corp can only be hit by one more of those. The damage is kind of already done, but it does mean that it's unlikely that Laws has the third one. Going back over to Laws' turn, he decides to install Sacred. Oh my goodness, and he has the third Diversion of Funds in hand. That is some crazy Diversion of Funds draw. At any rate, the Corp pays the 3 to res Aket, knowing that they're just going to lose money anyway. Laws goes ahead and dereses and bounces with Saker. And so the Corp is now down to 0 credits. A card goes in server 1 for the Corp, and that's probably the Ash that Laws saw earlier. Even if it was an agenda, it just wouldn't matter. It wouldn't make sense for the Corp to put an agenda out in that server right now. That is just bad luck, though. Look at that. 3 Diversion of Funds right in a row, right when Laws could use them. The early game is definitely when Diversion of Funds is the most profitable for the runner, because there's little to no ice to break through into HQ, or in this case, Laws was simply derezzing the Aket. Unsurprisingly, the Corp decides to take 2 credits. Going back over to Laws, he draws a card, and now the game can begin to sort of equalize, balance out a little bit. I'm not very familiar with Baklan Bakin. The first time each turn you encounter a piece of ice, the first time each run you encounter a piece of ice, put a power counter on Baklan, and then you can trash Baklan to derez the piece of ice you are encountering if its strength is equal to or less than the number of hosted power counters take a tag. Now, the fact that he didn't get any power counters on that must mean that you don't actually encounter an unrezzed piece of ice. He does run into this server here and bumps into a wall-to-wall, which, sad for SSO, they would have rather rezzed that. Laws goes ahead and trashes that, and on the rebound of his turn, in which the Corp previously installed a card in the remote and clicked for 2 credits, he then plays Corporate Grant. This is a very credit denial heavy deck. I mean, this guy is going deep into the credit denial. Usually you see this kind of thing from 419, but Laws can certainly do it as well. He's incentivized to do so, gaining that money, of course, whenever the Corp reses the ice. Now, SSO thankfully was able to pull out another face-up agenda, put it down in the remote, and put 3 advancement tokens on the last unadvanced ice in that remote server, as well as play mass commercialization, so they were able to bounce back and threaten the res on one of these pieces of ice. Laws is down to 0 credits, and the reason for that is because derezzing things with Saker isn't free. He does need to pay for that, as well as the fact that DJ Fenris does cost him 3 credits, in addition that he had just played a class act. Hernando Cortez hits the table for obvious reasons. Anytime the Corp has 10 or more credits, that's going to increase the cost to res pieces of ice even further. So right now we're looking at a minimum, if the Corp has 10 credits, of a 2 credit increase, assuming that the ice isn't something like Troll that doesn't have a single subroutine. Now, Kayamba Grid is rezzed by the Corp, and that's going to allow him to put more advancement tokens on ice in the remote server, as well as increase the cost to come into the server by 2 credits per piece of ice that has advancement tokens on it. So, sorry, not come into the server, approach the server, which means that Laws is going to have to have an extra 6 credits to make this run successful. In spite of getting hit by 3 diversion of funds early on, it does look like SSO is going to get back into the game because this server is looking pretty untouchable. Laws down to 2 credits. He's just clicking up for credits, desperately trying to get some kind of econ action going. He installs a Kyros McIntyre, which seems a little ambitious. I will, to his point, say that it is a connection, and if you didn't know, Paul's Cafe synergizes with unique connections, which means that by installing Kyros early, it lowers the install cost of Golden by a credit. However, back on the... well, I guess it also triggered Corp Grant when he installed it. Anyway, back on the Corp side of things, we see Beanstalk Royalty followed by a double advance of City Works and the score of City Works sweeping Corporate Grant off the table. Now, Laws is playing Net Installer at this point. He clicks up for a couple credits and installs Multi-Threader, and I think this displays the weakness of Laws' deck. Laws' deck is insanely powerful once it's set up. Insanely powerful. The problem is it is far too slow. In spite of having all 3 of his diversion of funds drawn early on at a time when he could take advantage of them, he is still setting up his whole get up, rig, resource madness. And now don't get me wrong, once it's set up, it's going to be insanely powerful. Paul's Cafe is going to allow him to install his birds at instant speed with a discount equal to the number of unique connections he has. Right now he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 unique connections, which means he can install Golden completely for free. Use multi-threader credits to break and reduce the cost of whatever he's breaking. The problem is that SSO just installed the game-winning agenda into that remote server, that Kayambe Grid server. He's also dedication ceremonied that Hollywood renovation, which means that if Laws can't get into this server this turn, he's done for. That's kind of looking like what's going to happen here. Laws is going to click up twice for 2 credits and probably try to make a run, but it's just not going to matter. The Kayambe Grid keeps him out. He's making this run, but it's really not going to matter. So we see an Asteroid Belt res completely for free by SSO. It's a very heavy end the run barrier. Sorry, and I was just reading the text there to make sure that indeed he did have to pay a single credit extra to res that, in addition... No, not in addition to Hernando Cortez. The single extra credit, I believe, came from Reina Roja. The runner realizes that he can't get into the server, jacks out, takes another credit, passes it back to the Corp, who will undoubtedly score the Hollywood renovation. So, we see here, even in a world where Laws got perfect draw against SSO, a deck like Laws's will lose to any tempo deck. And it's just simply because there's no way Laws can get set up and have the money to contest servers quick enough to make this strategy work against things like, Train, Wayland, Titan Transnational. I'm sure controlling the message would be difficult, although we did see a Miss Bones in here, and that's probably to help with the asset spam game. But yeah, any deck that's trying to score out quickly will probably not have too much trouble with this deck. Which was very sad because Laws really did get that early advantage by stealing this Hollywood, and that was pretty good. The diversion of funds into HQ to drop the Corp down to 0 credits and run in here and hope that this wasn't Space Ice, and it wasn't. It was a very good move by Laws. The problem was, once that Kayambe Grid hit the table and was res, there was no way Laws was going to have the money to get in there. And it is sad because, I mean, installing Golden for free, and in fact, we know he has Saker in hand. He could just host Saker onto Paul's Cafe, so he could install Saker for free. He was starting to get the engine going. It was going to be pretty impressive once it was set up. Essentially, Cyber Trooper Talut gives whatever he installs +2 strength. He's installing whatever he wants for free. He de-reses things. He gets paid for it because of Kiros McIntyre. The Corp is spending tons of money to do this. Eventually, he can de-res things for free with Bachlan if he has to. Overall, a very, very strong strategy. And not to mention, Corporate Grant makes that even funnier, because while you're installing the birds from Paul's Cafe for free, you're forcing the Corp to lose even more money, and you're breaking for free, well, maybe not for free, but very cheaply with multi-threader. Yeah, the engine is insanely strong. However, similar to stealth decks, it lacked any kind of real buying power, real money, which was really what hurt him against the Kayambe grid. Now, I don't know if he should have installed the multi-threader. The Cyber Trooper Talut is certainly attractive because it is going to raise the strength of whatever you throw down here. The real problem was going to be this Masvingo. Even if Laws somehow had Slaker installed and was able, or on Paul's Cafe, Lightning installed it, it gets the +2 strength from Salute. Let's get the stats on Saker real quick. I think it comes in with 1 strength. So you can boost 2 strength for 2 and 1 for 1 to break. It's not going to change the fact that Masvingo is still going to cost 11 credits to break all of those subroutines. Masvingo is quite the powerful piece of ice against anything that isn't Sunny's Sherman, I believe it's called. Yeah, especially now that I believe Lamb has been removed from the game, Masvingo's stock goes pretty high up. Not many people run Sherman. Yeah, because Saker would have gotten the boost from Talut, would have matched strength. 2 credits could have came off of multi-threader, but yeah. The real problem is that Hernando Cortez doesn't even affect Masvingo. I think we went over that previously, but Hernando Cortez can only affect subroutines that are printed on the card, not ones that are gained after the card is flipped. Yeah. Alright. Overall, I think the takeaway is just Laws' strategy, super powerful, but will never win in a competitive scene because it's far too slow. We'll jump into a new one here. I believe we already watched Botnet, but it does look like seems like a different matchup, so we'll try this one. And we're seeing Asmari, same Laws deck as before. We'll see if it has any better luck in this current game. We're on turn 6. We see a double Economic Warfare into hard-hitting news. Not sure what happened before this turn, but that is certainly going to hurt. Okay. So, I suppose our runner had some choice words to say and decided to just quit the game. It's a little disappointing, especially considering that their own strategy is quite oppressive once it gets running. Well, we'll just pretend this didn't happen. We'll watch Kamalo versus Kronos Protocol. Kamalo, I don't think we've ever seen a Kamalo game while I've been recording. Kamalo's a very interesting ID. I hate him, but that doesn't mean that he's unfair. He's kind of a fixed wizard. In some ways, he's a wizard who can do things that not even wizard could do. We will read his ID ability. Once per turn, you may remove X virus counters from your installed cards to trash a cost that you access at no cost, where X is that card's res or play cost. Essentially, Kumalo once a turn can pay virus counters equal to the cost of the card, the play cost of the card, and trash it. Very strong ability, trashes anything that costs 0 for free. Kamalo, very frustrating in my experience runner to play against because he flips the game on its head. Suddenly cards that are very, very good in their res to trash ratio become very bad against Kamalo. Things like team sponsorship, he laughs at. He pays a single virus token to trash. Things like that in general. As far as the actual state of the game currently, we see a single piece of ice on HQ, a single unknown card in a remote, and Kamalo has a lib account, virus breeding ground, which virus breeding ground is very important for Kamalo. It gives him that virus token fuel, as well as the spoilers, which is going to force the Corp to trash the top card of R&D whenever they score an agenda. Now, Crota's Protocol gets to choose, I believe. Let's see here. Yes. The first net damage the runner suffers each turn, Crota's Protocol gets to look at the runner's hand and choose the card that's trashed. Not a top tier ID, never really has been, but I do appreciate this ID very much. It ensures that your net damage is going to hit very valuable cards. Problem is, of course, is that sometimes the runner just doesn't have anything valuable. An upgrade goes on to R&D and another mystery card and a new remote. The previous mystery card reveals itself to be a Nanny's. Back to Kamalo, he installs a new virus breeding ground, and back to the Corp, the new mystery card was a Rashida. Kamalo would have been happy to run had he known it was a Rashida. Would have been a free to trash card. However, 3 credits and 3 draw goes over to the Corp. Piece of ice installed in R&D. A new server created with a single piece of ice protecting it. Now, if you know anything about a Kamalo, one of the best ways to fight against him is to completely ice up the centrals. It doesn't seem that Crota's Protocol is interested in doing that, and they might have the liberty to get away with doing this because net damage may be their game-winning move, not necessarily whether or not Kamalo can get into the servers. Kamalo gains installs Poemu and draws 2 cards, and installs a Progenitor. Progenitor going to be that virus. Sorry, it is not technically not a virus card. It is a daemon, but a virus synergistic card that can host programs, and whenever there is a purge, the hosted program still remains with 1 virus counter on it. The Corp Crota's Protocol installs a new card and double advances it? Or do they double advance the upgrade that was in the card, the server? Seems that they've actually double advanced the upgrade, which there are a multitude of possibilities that could be. That could be, the upgrade could be something like an Embolus, or not an Embolus, what is it, a Biovault, or perhaps it really was an agenda, and the newly installed card is some other kind of trap or trick. Kamalo uses Poemu credits to help offset the cost of Utai, already a cheap card to install, paying only a single credit. They then install Hive Mind, a very good card to have on Progenitor. Hive Mind allows all virus cards to be treated as if they have the number of virus tokens on Hive Mind. It is revealed that a Project Yagi Uda was the card double advanced in Server 3, which is strange that Crota's Protocol seemed to want Kamalo to run into this server, because he could have just never advanced that. Instead, decided to bait in the run by double advancing it previously. They go ahead and replace the card, the agenda that was just scored, with a new card in Server 3 and advance it once. Now, spoilers caused a single card to be trashed from R&D. We don't know what that is. Kamalo, meanwhile, continuing to just set up, installs a Palangi and runs. Now, Utai should be able to handle whatever is res because of that Palangi. Envelope is revealed, a barrier. Utai is a code gate breaker, decoder, so Palangi's virus token will have to be used. And he will pay 4 credits to go ahead and break Envelope. A Marcus Batty is revealed. So they'll play a Psy game. whatever, if the corp bets a different number, which looks like he did, he bet 1, the runner bet 0. So the corp now gets to resolve a subroutine on envelope. He could go for that net damage, or he could go for the end the run. Palangi's ability can only be used once per turn, so if this was an agenda that he wanted to score, he could just end the run. Also, the runner doesn't have any clicks left. It looks like they'll have to manually do the trigger, but the corp is choosing to fire the end the run subroutine. The runner seems a bit unclear as to what happens. He's making a pretty classic mistake that even I continue to make to this day. He thought that he needed to spend a different number of credits from the corp in order to prevent the side game from firing. He's saying it broke his brain. He's used to playing as corp, so he was thinking about the side game incorrectly. Envelope ends the run through Marcus Batty. And it goes back over to the corp, who, if this is a 4-3 or a 4-2 or less, they have the privilege of scoring it. It is the Flower Sermon, which lets them swap cards. Well, it's a little more complicated than just swapping cards with R&D. So they get to reveal the top card of R&D. So they have to show both the runner and themselves that card. Then they draw 2 cards. And then they can add one of the cards from HQ to the top of R&D. Now this is a very strong ability. It can be used to do a multitude of things. One of them is, well, it can simply help you filter your cards. Another thing is, it can completely protect your R&D if you want to force the runner into running into something, say your snares. Kumalo installs Lib Account and Knob Carry and runs pretty boldly into Archives. Now, if there are 2 Breach Domes in Archives, he's just dead right now. Lucky for him, there are no Breach Domes in Archives. Quite a few cards are revealed here, but nothing too terribly tasty. Very happy to see the Marcus Batty as well as the Neural EMP. That can be frustrating if the corp uses it from Cronus Protocol, because they are going to get to choose what that card is that they ping. However, interestingly, there are 2 copies of Arc Lockdown. So it looks like this Cronus Protocol could try to play Rig Shooter if they really wanted, where they shoot the rig out of the hands of the runner and then remove them from game using Arc Lockdown. 2 new cards are installed in new remotes. Makes you think that they aren't agendas because the corp did not install them behind the RD-Res piece of ice. And a new piece of ice on Archives, the first piece of ice on Archives. Kumalo installs an imp and runs server 4, and it is a snare, and that's just going to kill Kumalo, I believe. Playing it pretty fast and loose there. The runner is trying to be funny and say that he never ran the server. I think the game just kind of ends here. I don't quite know what the holdup is. Oh well. Yeah, I'm not entirely certain. It looks like the client is being buggy because of Cronus Protocol and not actually ending the game. The game is over here. Kamala dies from net damage, and that is kind of the risk anytime you run something like that against Jinteki with no cards in hand. His idea clearly was to use the newly installed imp to trash things in the server for free, but I do have to say he's already Kamalo. He probably doesn't really need to install the imp. He probably just should have drawn twice. And if you wanted to check these servers, then just run the servers. But overall, I mean, not too bad. You can clearly see what he was trying to do. He was using Knobcree to add virus tokens to Hivemind. Hivemind allowing all virus cards to now have a token, and probably was planning on just breaking a lot of things with Palangi and Utai. Not the worst Kumalo deck I've ever seen. Not necessarily the most impressive, but overall not like there were no huge flaws here. Really, his biggest flaw was just running the face down card against Jinteki with not at least 3 cards in hand. 3 very much is the magic number against Jinteki. I know it's a pain. I know no one wants to do it because, you know, you want to run, you want to get that tempo going. You don't want to waste clicks drawing cards that you don't necessarily need at that moment. But yeah, that was the misplay, so to say, especially against Chronos Protocol. Maybe you can get away with running face down cards if you're playing against Palana or even replicating Perfection, but against a Chronos Protocol who very clearly is going to try to kill you with net damage. There we go. Now that looks like the trigger fired successfully. Anyway, against a Corp who is definitely trying to kill you with net damage, very, very risky to run in there with absolutely no cards in hand, no way to prevent damage. It was risky even to run Archives early when he did, but luckily there were no Breach Domes in there. It wouldn't be completely out of the world for 2 of those face downs to be Breach Dome. But yep, always nice to see a Jinteki flatline. I think those are the game endings that make me the happiest. No, we're not going to watch this guy's game. He was the guy who just bopped out. It's that same Laws deck. Alright, Hoshko Shiro versus Argus. We're pretty familiar with Hoshko. She seems to be a pretty popular runner these days. And Argus, tried and true Wayland ID, been around since the first. I think Argus was the second Wayland ID released. At any rate, Corp side of this field has an upgrade on R&D, an ice on HQ, and an ice on an empty remote. Hoshko already has the Amakua Data Sucker thing going on, as well as Film Critic. Man, Argus is going to be sad to see that, because that's going to allow Hoshko to take agendas without triggering Argus's ID ability. To make things worse, there's also a no one home here on the table, so if Argus ever wants to hard-hitting news Hoshko, he has to set the trace up at a base 0 to even get it to stick. Now, 2 agendas are already in the score areas of both players. A Cyberdeck Sandbox from Argus. Now, that's very fortunate for them. That means anytime they want to purge these virus counters, they can gain 4 credits to do it. Also, Project Atlas stolen by Hoshko. Hoshko continues to install Daily Cast, going to have a lot of money coming in, has 12 credits now already. New card in a remote was Rashida. So Argus has the draw and credits to do whatever they want to do to set up the puzzle that Hoshko is going to have to fix. Instead of using any of these cards that they have in hand, they decide their best option is to install Double Advance, a Hostile Takeover. Now that seems strange to me. I think for sure you would want to try to ice up Archives, ice up R&D. They're set up to win the game because they have this Cyberdeck Sandbox. Because it means that if they ice up the centrals and purge viruses, not only are they preventing Hoshko's Amakua Data Sucker interaction, they're actually getting paid to do it. But perhaps the 3 cards in hand weren't valuable. Okay, it does look like this guy seems to run Cyberdeck's Virus Suite, so perhaps one of the cards that was discarded was a Cyberdeck's. Hoshko pulled that off of R&D, which triggered Cyberdeck Sandbox. Cyberdeck Sandbox, if you didn't know, pays you out 4 credits when you purge virus counters, and Cyberdeck's Virus Suite counts as purging virus counters when the runner bounces into it. So they got paid 4 credits to do that. And advanced in the card in server 1 as well as an upgrade. Well, the revelation that one of these is an upgrade. We don't know if the new card installed is an upgrade or not. Hoshko has a hunting grounds, which may help against things like Data Raven, but I don't know of any other on-encounter Argus ice that you would particularly run. Boomerang comes down on the unres piece of ice in the remote server, and Hoshiko is going to try her luck with it, running in there. Now the Corp has to decide whether or not they want to res this. It might not be worth it. They go ahead and decide to. It is a Tithonium. That explains a little bit why Argus might have been really eager to score the hostile takeover, since you can spend an agenda to forfeit the cost, or sorry, to forego the cost of resing Tithonium, but confident with the money that he has, he spends real money to res Tithonium, and that is going to knock Amakua off the table. He's going to get to trash 2 programs. He decides to trash Boomerang and Amakua. Oh, I see. So, no, that can't be right. Why? Oh, no. I'm so sorry. Boomerang was used to break all the subroutines except trash a program, upon which the Corp decided to trash Amakua. Batty was res. The Corp pays 1, the runner pays 0, and the run from Tithonium is fired off of Batty. And not only end the run, but end the run after trashing a resource. So the film critic is gone. Hoshko pulls a standoff off of R&D, decides to take the 2 net damage from it, and the card in the remote server was another Cyberdeck sandbox, which means when the Corp purges virus counters, they're making 8 credits. It's pretty nuts. Hoshko runs R&D hoping to see something else, but doesn't find it. She has plenty of money, but since Amakua just hit the bin, and she lost her film critic, she needs to convert that money into some kind of forward tempo. Another film critic hits the table, so that's a good recovery. And okay, she does install another liberated accounts. I don't know if that was the right move, simply because she doesn't need more money right now. And a liberated accounts doesn't really start paying for itself until you've clicked it that 3rd time. Instead, she draws up, installs an Ice Carver and a Corroder, but the card in the remote from the Corp ends up being an SSL, and that's going to win them the game. It's strange that they installed the Ice Carver. A little bit. Because if you see here, they clicked twice to draw, then installed the Ice Carver, then the Corroder. Seeing a double advanced card in server 1 really makes you think that probably the play should have been draw, install Corroder, and just run. And try your luck. Because the Corp was on game point at that point. And yeah, I guess she was just maybe betting that it wasn't an agenda. But there was no evidence so far to support the idea that that wasn't an agenda because the advancement tokens were on it. We haven't seen any NGO fronts or anything like that. Yeah. The Ice Carver was a little greedy. We don't know what this card was, but assuming it was a card she could either get through by losing cards from hand or something like that, she had plenty of money to break Tithonium. It's just 5 credits to break. Tithonium isn't that expensive to break, surprisingly. 3 plus 3. No, it's 6 credits to break, but one of those would have came from bad publicity anyway. So it would have been 5 credits to break. Anyway. We'll watch a Anarch versus Jinteki. Omar Kyung. Seems that he rebirthed, probably from Val. No, because there's no bad publicity. Who did he rebirth from? Trying to find out here. Yeah, it doesn't actually tell us who he was. Oh well. Maybe he was Hoshko. In the bin, we see Amped Up. That's an interesting one. Odore? Hold up. Was he Max? Sorry, no, these are the questions, right? Where did these cards in the bin go? Oh, who cares? Alright. Current state of the game is an agenda just scored by the Corp viral weaponization that's going to cause the runner to lose all cards in grip. However, one of them was I've Had Worse. They were able to draw up. Polana going to gain a credit every time the Corp draws a card. Really slamming and jamming here. They have 8 credits to their name and a single click left. We're looking at a piece of ice on Archives, a piece of ice on HQ, and a piece of ice on the remote. Remote contains a single advanced unknown card. On Omar's side of the table, we have money and draw set up, but no breakers or anything like that to get into places. Corp spends their last click to create a new remote. Stargate comes down and targets the completely open R&D. Very good move, very good response to just the board state in general by forcing the Corp to ice Archives and then swapping immediately back to R&D. Very good. Deuces Wild is played to go ahead and gain 3 credits and draw 2 cards. The Stargate looks like it trashed a Mushi Noshi, and another run on R&D is going to trash an NGO front. The card in the Corp's remote is another viral weaponization. It's going to force Omar to pitch his hand again. Earthrise Hotel going to go ahead and help him draw back up. He loses a second copy of Odore. Now, whether or not he runs 3 will remain to be seen, but even if he runs the third one, you got to think it's going to be lost in his stack somewhere. Stargate run again on the completely unprotected R&D reveals Snare, Project Junebug, and House of Knives. He decides to trash the Snare. Very smart. Runs, trashes the Project Junebug for free. Runs a third time and grabs that House of Knives. Very good use of Stargate in general. Snare was definitely the right choice to trash. There are 2 snares in the bin, which means there's a good chance that the third one won't be showing up anytime soon. Mushi Noshin played by Polana, throwing out a new card, giving Omar the chance to either go in for it or let it be. He's going to draw up 3 times and play a hedge fund. He says, I'm calling your bluff. That's not an agenda. Yeah, but turns out it was, so that's game. In that situation, I think I would have ran the face down card. Omar drew up 3 times, and you can see 2 of the cards he pitched there were Black Orchestra and MK Ultra. I think that's definitely the time where you run the face down. He had 8 cards in hand? Yes, I believe, because he sure gambled. And sure gamble is an interesting card when you're playing against net damage. In some ways, sure gamble can be more valuable as HP. Because when you think about it, it's almost like a single-use Guru Devinder for a single net damage. Guru Devinder is going to cost you 4 credits to block 1 net damage. So by not playing Sure Gamble, you're kind of using Sure Gamble as Guru Devinder, as a Guru Devinder stand-in, a one-time use. But he had 8 cards in hand, and that was a triple advance card in the remote. I think you run that. Mostly because even if it's a Junebug at that point, you trash, what, 6 cards from hand? But it doesn't really matter. We saw that 1 Junebug was already in the bin. So I guess it's possible it could have been a second or a third Junebug. So he might have been worried about that, but did he have much of a choice? Either way, it was a gamble. It usually is with Jinteki. It was a gamble, and he took the chance that wasn't an agenda, but It was. And I guess the Corp was scoring pretty aggressively here. We had already seen 3 agendas, and it was only turn 8. Well, turn 8. 4. Yeah, 3. Well, 3 agendas. This SSL ended up being the 4th. I guess it wasn't the worst gamble to think that maybe, perhaps it wasn't an agenda. Or maybe if it was an agenda, it might be a 2-pointer or a 1-pointer. But took the gamble and lost. As we all do sometimes while playing Netrunner. Black Tree versus Smoke. Smoke already has an R&D interface on the table and daily cast and 12 credits to her name. Black Tree has a pad tap? That's a new one. A pad tap which just got trashed by the rich Smoke. And 2 pieces of ice on the main centrals. Archives being the only uniced server. Central server. Back to Black Tree. After Smoke installed Kadi and clicked her, we see install in a new server, install in a new server, install in a new server. Classic Black Tree move. One of these is probably an agenda, at least. Pad tap coming out of Black Tree. Very interesting. Anyway, Smoke installs After Image. Great sentry breaker if you're running stealth. Unsurprisingly, one of the face downs was an agenda, and it is Sting. It's going to make future stings that Smoke steals painful. Black Tree forcing a net damage, and Sting itself forcing a net damage. So we see the loss of Daily Cast and Netmerker. Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful pick from Black Tree. I mean, they didn't pick it, obviously, but beautiful snipe from Black Tree. Smoke's not going to be happy about losing Netmerker. Undoubtedly, she probably runs more than one copy, but that's definitely going to slow Smoke down. She goes ahead and clicks Kadi and puts a corroder down on the table. Black Tree, meanwhile, creates a new server, ices up archives, and takes a credit. Back over to Smoke. She draws and installs a buffer drive. Ouch. That's going to be a very hard counter to Black Tree's ID ability. Buffer drive, the first time each turn you take net damage, you can add one of the net damage cards to the bottom of your stack. Very, very painful against Black Tree, since Black Tree just wants to kind of do 1 net damage a turn. Now back to Black Tree, they spend a hefty 4 credit sum to throw MCA Informant down on to Connie Jones, except they misplayed it because MCA Informant has to be the last click. So instead they take 2 credits, throw MCA Informant down on Kadi. Now the trick about Kadi is you can't use her more than once per turns. You can't use her to take the money and trash her with MCA Informant. In fact, this was a misplay. This shouldn't have happened. Smoke. Yeah, even the Corp is mentioning, oh, you can still use her. I think that's probably more of a bug on Jinteki, because Smoke shouldn't have been able to take the money. Odd. I didn't think this is how you play this. I'll have to look that up. I'm going to make a note. Check Kadi MCA interacting, because I believe that's not the correct way to do it, but perhaps Nisei changed the rules, so that's not the interaction anymore. Anyway, Jinteki ices HQ with a second piece of ice. Back over to Smoke. She's probably feeling pretty confident with that buffer drive, definitely giving her the option to be a little more reckless with her moves. Does run one of the face down cards, and it is a snare, and she loses a second copy of Netmerker, which she then shuffled under, or rather added to the bottom of her stack with buffer drive. That's got to be painful, or just frustrating at the very least. Snare adding that tag. Smoke goes ahead and removes it. Back over to Jinteki. They install a floating ice on a new server and take 2 credits. Back over to Smoke. There's a double draw, sure gamble, and a click for a credit. Black Tree Hedge Funds draws a card and takes a credit. Players just seem to be gaining money and setting up. Gaining money and drawing cards, rather. Smoke dieseling, looking for her cards. Trickster Taka, a welcome sight for Smoke now that Netrunner doesn't seem to be on the table anytime soon. Taka gonna generate 1 stealth credit per turn. Unless an agenda is stolen, I believe. Yep. Blacktree continuing to create a server with nothing in it. Adds a second piece of ice to the remote. Now, run on RD. We're going to finally get to see some action here. You have to think Blacktree's probably running things like definitely Kakugo, Aiki, possibly even a data loop. They choose not to res the ice on R&D. They must have better things to protect. Probably an agenda or two in HQ, you would imagine. Blacktree tends to be pretty agenda dense, so that they can trigger their ID ability as often as possible. As well as Obakadas are going to be in there somewhere. The real problem is Smoke has installed a film critic, which is really going to hurt Blacktree for more reason than one. First off, it obviously turns off Blacktree's ID ability, but the real clincher is that those Obakadas now cost 0 net damage to steal. There's a run on the remote where Blacktree does not res the outermost piece of ice on that remote, but chooses to res a Kakugo. It's going to ping Smoke for 1 when she passes through with Corroder. And the card in the remote is a Junebug. Very sneaky from Blacktree. I thought for sure that was an Obakata. It read very much like an amateur mistake of install double advance. Oh, that's an Obakata. Please don't steal it with your film critic. But might have been a double bluff because it was that Junebug, which dropped Smoke to no cards in hand. She drew up. Blacktree on their next turn took 2 credits and preemptive actioned more goodies back into their deck. Hedge Fund, Snare, and the other MCA informant, Film Critic being a very tasty choice for that MCA informant. Smoke gonna run R&D. Choosing to spend a credit off Trickster Taka, possibly just to prevent her from trashing herself. Doesn't see anything important in R&D and installs Beth. Blacktree continuing to install ice, puts another piece of ice on R&D, but does not seem to have the money to pay for it. They're down to 7 credits, especially because they chose not to res the piece of ice on the outermost part of the remote, although that was definitely because the Junebug inside was meant to be accessed, never actually stolen. A run on server 5 shows a breached dome. A lot of Blacktrees don't, well, just a lot of Jinteki in general tend not to install breached domes, because if the runner never runs them, they're stuck there. But that's going to be another net damage, or sorry, a meat damage at the top card of R&D. They run the final face down remote, and it is another snare. And Blacktree pays that out. Very happy to see that. And this is playing against Buffer Drive, which means this is hurting Smoke a lot. Buffer Drive is very good against that chip damage, that ping once per turn, but having ran the meat damage, which no, meat damage does, okay, so Buffer Drive works anytime cards are trashed from the stack. So it would have fired on Breach Dome, but certainly isn't going to fire on the Junebug, certainly isn't going to fire on, or sorry, not the Junebug, the Snare, or all of the points of damage of Junebug. Now, it looked like Hangeki was played by Corp. Now, this isn't a card you often see. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out even what it does. It's not a card that's often used. Play only if the runner trashed a Corp card during his or her last turn. Choose an installed Corp card. The runner may access that card if he or she does not remove Hangeki from the game and add it to the runner's score area as an agenda worth -1 point. So it looks like a card was decided to be trashed, although I didn't catch which one it was. Let's check out what that was. Oh, yeah, a card isn't trashed. The runner just accessed it, Breach Dome, so they took a damage. That makes more sense why Black Tree was willing to install naked Breach Domes, because they were planning on Hongekking them. Anyway, we missed a couple turns there, but it looks like Smoke was able to host Philotic Entanglement on Film Critic. Meanwhile, Black Tree has installed a card in the remote and advanced it once. Harvester! So happy to see Harvester. This is a great card. Great card. It's amazing if the runner runs into it with a full hand size and an inability to break it, because it means the runner loses 6 credits. I can talk. 6 cards. It's insane. Essentially, Harvester has 2 subs that force the runner to draw up to 3 cards. Draws 3 cards and then discard down to their hand size. And it only costs a credit to res, and the strength of 3 means it's not free for the runner to break. Runner gets into R&D, sees a sheet queue, and trashes it, and installs a Netmerker. Black Tree accidentally playing MCA Informant on their first click again is probably going to undo that. Take 2 credits and then play MCA. The good choices for MCA are either Netmerker or Film Critic. No, Netmerker can't be targeted because it's not a connection. So Film Critic or Beth, definitely want to target the Film Critic. Beth is not really that dangerous against Black Tree. In fact, kind of helps mill the runner out if you can hang around the 10 to 14 credit mark, because it's going to force the runner to draw a card. Now, Film Critic is the target of MCA. Instead of worrying about that right now, Smoke runs right into R&D, pays to break Harvester with Penrose, which is a pretty favorable trade. It's just 3 credits to break. A lot of those being stealth credits are kind of free. She gets into R&D, doesn't see anything important. But you gotta think she's gotta take care of that MCA informant. Because if she doesn't, Jinteki's probably just going to trash the Netmerker. With only 2 credits to their name, Black Tree spends those 2 credits to res a Miraju on HQ. So Smoke can either break this and get bounced into archives, or they can let it fire, which is going to allow Black Tree to draw a card and then shuffle a card back into R&D. Smoke is going to let that fire, so you got to think if there was an agenda in HQ that Black Tree didn't want Smoke to have, they've now gotten the ability to shuffle it into R&D. Going into archives would not be a good idea right now, although I believe the runner can jack out before they actually access archives. Getting in HQ, Smoke sees a DNA tracker, nothing fancy there. And turns out the card in Server 6 was an NGO front, in which the Corp goes ahead, reses it, takes the money from it, and shows a Mlinzy. Mlinzy's an interesting choice. Anansi is almost always a better card, but Mlinzy's a credit cheaper to res, I suppose. Anyway, using those stealth credits, Smoke is able to just bypass Mlinzy, since it is a sentry, making you wonder if that was really the right choice for Black Tree to do. You almost think they maybe should have just kept that money. However, Smoke spent her last 2 credits to trash her Film Critic, getting rid of MCA Informant. Black Tree clicks for 2 credits and puts another piece of ice on R&D. Smoke says okay and runs HQ. Since Jinteki only has the 1 credit, you gotta think the only thing they can really res are I-keys and harvesters. So the first outermost piece of ice on HQ is not rezzed, and then Smoke breaks Miraju, knowing full well that Blacktree can't really afford to keep rezzing it. In fact, they can't res it at all. I believe Miraju doesn't force the runner to access archives. So, yeah, you don't have to crash into archives and hit those breach domes. Smoke jacks out, runs HQ again. Blacktree, lacking any money to really res anything, is probably just going to have to let this run come clean through. Looks like they're going to need to take care of some of the triggers manually on Miraju. Smoke going into HQ, and she sees an Obokata protocol, which she cannot host on the non-existing film critic, in addition to the fact that she does not have 5 cards in hand. You need, if it's not the game-winning Obokata, you need 5 cards in hand to steal an Obokata from Blacktree. Otherwise, you just need the 4 if it's the game-winning point. Probably a little frustrated. Smoke runs R&D, breaks the existing Harvester. And this is why I don't think rezzing the Malinzi was the right play. Rezzing the Malinzi just forced Smoke to spend 2 stealth credits. Wasn't really that big of a thing. Whereas if the NGO money had instead been kept, it could have been spent to protect the centrals. I also don't know why Jinteki installed this 3rd piece of ice on R&D when they were so low on money to begin with. Especially because it doesn't seem to be a Harvester or something like that. If it was a Harvester, Jinteki would have rezzed it by now. When Jinteki takes 3 credits, it goes back over to Smoke, who installs Kadi, clicks Kadi, draws a card. Blacktree takes a credit, and hedge funds finally back in a healthy-ish amount of money. 10 credits to their name. Jinteki in that 10 credit range is going to trigger Beth. Beth forcing a draw from Smoke. Smoke modded an R&D interface. That can be a little risky against Blacktree. Accessing 3 cards off of R&D. There's an install and a double advance in the remote server. If this is the Obokata, Smoke has to make that decision now. This is bad. Smoke's going in here. On her first click to check the remote, but the problem is if this is an Obokata, she's going to lose a card from Kakugo and not be able to steal it. Perhaps realizing the mistake, they're saying, oh, sorry, and then, screw it. I think they realize that they're 1 card short. They do have a card in the stack that they could draw if they wanted to. They're amazed that... Wow, that's bad form. So, what essentially happened is the runner sort of realized that they were screwed. Normally we don't say anything here, but since the runner left, we're going to go ahead and respond to the corp. The runner left, and the corp doesn't quite realize it yet, but the runner was saying that even with buffer drive, he wasn't able to win, that Blacktree ground him down. And to a point, he is right. Black Tree made some good moves here. Some risky, well, not risky, but they were gambling moves, right? Like the installation of the snare or the breach dome, the use of Hungeki. But there were some good moves. MCA. Yeah, the corp doesn't quite realize this guy left. Anyway, MCA was there. That was a good include. It was used to get rid of Film Critic and then shuffled back in and got rid of the second Film Critic. So he had an answer to the deck's biggest weakness, which is Film Critic. And he was able to, in general, just tempt the runner into accessing things that the runner didn't want to access, such as baiting with NGO fronts or other cards that were on the table that eventually Smoke went into to go check. Really, the point I'm trying to get at is just that Smoke still could have played better. Smoke wasn't making some obviously bad choices or something like that. Like, she ran into a couple rough like gambles where she decided to check something and ended up biting her. But even in spite of those, she could have played a little better in essentially like this. Sorry, I'm trying to find how to it is 11:30 at night, so perhaps this is a bit too late to be Chesney's brain is a little fried. But essentially, when she ran and hit the breach dome, there was a turn several turns ago where she runs and hits breach dome and then runs again and hits a snare, or it was a June bug or something like that, when she had buffer drive equipped. Now, I think probably what you do is you want to maximize the efficiency of buffer drive. So if you run, click, your early run is you hit a breach dome and you have buffer drive, you get to shuffle that breach dome card into your stack. Now, breach dome still trashes the top card of R&D, but you've triggered buffer drive that turn. So I think at that point, you stop running. You stop running and you say, apologies. You say, okay, I've gambled this turn. I've played my bet. I lost, but I'm gonna recover from my losses, take the buffer drive trigger and go home. And then if you still want to check the face down card, you run it the next turn so that you can trigger buffer drive again. Unfortunately, he didn't do that. There were a couple turns where he took several amounts of net damage all at once. Now, there isn't really a way to predict that. There's not like a better way to play against that. But unfortunately, that, like, basically the interaction where he runs into a double or triple advanced Project Junebug, and takes a bunch of net damage all at once. Buffer drive is only going to be able to recover one of those cards, obviously. But I don't think he should have installed the second R&D interface. The Trickster Taka made sense. I can't blame him for the Kadi either. He needed a source of money. I don't think he should have played the hedge funds, though. I know that's so weird. Or the diesels. I don't think you play the diesels in this matchup, because you're not rushing. If you see here, Smoke had no reason to be worried about losing the game based on agenda points. Like, no worry whatsoever. So I don't think you play the diesels, because you don't need to move fast. You also definitely do not play the moddeds. You use them as HP. Daily casts are worth quite a bit, so using those is okay. For instance, daily cast is essentially worth 5 units, whereas modded is only worth 4, and 3 if you only count the discount. Whereas daily cast is going to get you 5 credits back. Depending on how you do the math on daily cast, it can be different. Some people consider daily cast to be only 4 credits, because of course you have to spend the click to install it and a card. Kadi makes sense because it's a recurring form of money, but yeah, I don't think she should have played. She would have held back on some of these diesels, some of these sure gambles. Although I didn't quite track which of these she lost to net damage, so she might have lost some of these to, let's actually check. No, used, seems like she used 2 of them. Anyway, yeah, against Black Tree, certainly should have played a little more conservative with those cards, and that might have made the difference, as well as maximizing the triggers on buffer drive might have made the difference that could have won her the game. Okay, Kumalo versus SSO. Interesting matchup. Kumalo tends to be a little slow because he needs to set up, but it looks like SSO's first turn did not have a face-up agenda that they were comfortable with installing and triggering their ability. Kumalo first turn Sure Gambles, Earth Rises, and Virus Breeding Grounds. Certainly going to give them the forward tempo they need to begin getting set up, although by no means are they set up. Back to SSO, they score hostile takeover out of hand. Kumalo Dirty Laundry's R&D, which they do have a virus token, so they can trash something from R&D. They run into mass commercialization, which they trash for 0 virus tokens. Very good hit for Kumalo. Gonna hurt SSO's mid to late game economy, losing that mass commercialization. They also throw down a lib account and drain 2 clicks of credits worth off of it. Back to SSO. SSO is going to have to plan how they play what seems to be a pretty rough opening for them. It's already turn 3 and they don't have an agenda up and running yet. They do install a card on an ice on R&D after having drawn a card, and they end their turn by hard-hitting newsing Kumalo, paying 5 to make sure those tags stick. Now, Kumalo has 8 credits, so they can do exactly what he just did, which is 8 credits, 4 clicks, remove all tags. Kumalo probably needed to do that. There wasn't really any world where he could dance around and say, oh, maybe I'll keep the tags, maybe I'll force you to trash things, but the Virus Breeding Ground is just too valuable to him, not to mention the 8 credits on lib account you wouldn't want to get rid of, or allow the corp to get rid of either. This does give the opportunity for SSO to install a City Works project face up, adding 3 tokens to the piece of ice in front of that server. It's tough because you never know what that ice is. It could be space ice, res completely for free. It could be a Mazvingo with 3 counters on it. Kumalo is going to force SSO to show him what it is. And so he runs the server. It is just a Mazvingo. So that's 4 end the run subroutines on that card. But now Kumalo knows what breaker he needs in order to get into that server. He ends his turn by playing a Sure Gamble and is going to discard, hopefully, a bin breaker. Perhaps even a paperclip. Although the classic virus breaker from Kumalo, barrier breaker, is, what's it called? It's the picture of like a board and something is piercing through it. I can't remember what it's called. I know what it does. It spends virus tokens to break things. Perhaps feeling a bit nervous, SSO installs a new piece of ice on the remote, advances CityWorks once, and takes a credit, using SSO to put 3 tokens on the ice in front of R&D. There it is. Yusuf, that's right. So Kumalo did have the Yusuf in hand, installs it, draws a card, puts a hippo down, and runs the remote, looking to trash that Mazvingo, but unfortunately they can't, because Hippo can only trash the outermost piece of ice. However, Kumalo is still able to break Mazvingo with Yusuf. Going to get in, hit that City Works, pay 3 meat damage, probably happily. They lost, unfortunately, a Virus Breeding Grounds and a lib account. The en passant probably really isn't missed in this situation. It's probably used for situations involving a DDoS scenario. A little frustrating to lose one of those virus breeding grounds, but Khumalo undoubtedly runs 3 of them, so there's a third one floating around in there somewhere. As a follow-up response, SSO installs another City Works, advances it once, and puts more counters on the ice in the remote. Khumalo runs HQ, the only server with ice on it that doesn't have advancement tokens, sees a digital rights management, trashes that with 1 virus token off of virus breeding grounds. Now every time he makes a successful run, Yusuf gets a virus token. He sees an under the bus, which could prove to be problematic later, although he has no connections installed yet. SSO pulls mass commercialization out of the bin, the one that Khumalo trashed very early, advances CityWorks once, and then plays mass commercial to gain 8 credits. Sorry, 10 credits because the agenda counts. No, it is just 8. Strange. It says gain 2 credits for each card with an advancement token. Oh, right. The ice on HQ didn't have an advancement token on it until he ended his turn. In a strange move, SSO decides to double advance City Works and then play Argus Crackdown, which is going to make it so that when the runner runs a server, probably they chose the remote, they have to spend 2 meat damage. I suppose it's free to play, so our SSO decided to just go for it. They're probably trying to milk City Works for everything that they can, because they want another trigger. But no, they don't have any new pieces of ice. They aren't able to take advantage of City Works being in there, although they are able to throw a casting call on a Hollywood renovation. Now, casting call installs an agenda face up. However, Hollywood renovation is already installed face up, so no change there. The real difference is that if Khumalo wants to steal this, they have to take 2 tags. Khumalo decides to run HQ and sees a preemptive action, which he will trash for 0 virus tokens. Whatever the ice is on HQ, it must not be space ice, otherwise SSO would have rezzed it. Afterwards, Khumalo goes ahead and runs the remote and sees an asteroid belt, which they let end the run. No need to fight that with Yusuf because there's no way he could also break Mazvingo at the same time. Decides to run HQ again, sees another Mazvingo, no luck there. And it goes back over to SSO, who now gets to choose how they want to, well, kind of win the game, really. They decide that their first course of action is to purge virus tokens. I'm not sure if that was the right move. It's going to give Khumalo another turn to set up. Khumalo installs Nobkri and Musazi. Musazi being essentially what Yusuf is, only for sentries, and Nobkri going to allow Khumalo to add another virus token onto something with the first successful run. This is why I don't think purging was the right move. Khumalo knows that SSO isn't going to res the ice on HQ. So after the purge, Khumalo says, okay, and runs HQ, and every time he makes a successful run, he gets to put virus tokens on Musazi and Yusuf. So he's right back up to where he was as far as virus tokens go. And in fact, he probably trashed something in HQ, I'm assuming. No, he accesses Mazvingo, but doesn't trash it. He must be storing up virus tokens because he wants to run in here and steal this Hollywood renovation, which he can do so if he has enough tokens to break Asteroid Belt and Mazvingo. The problem is that the Corp triple advances Hollywood, which puts 3 more tokens on Mazvingo. Going to make it very difficult for Khumalo to actually get in there. He needs at least a total of 9 virus tokens just to break the subroutines on Mazvingo and Asteroid Belt. Which after the run on HQ he does have, but it's too little too late, because he can't also get the strength to match Asteroid Belt. After running HQ and not seeing anything he liked, he ran R&D and sees a wormhole, code gate, high strength, not able to break that with Utai, knowing that the Corp would just end the run, though. But I don't know if that's I don't know if that's reason to quit, is it? Well, there's 3 points here. Oh, no, because the Corp wins next turn. Yeah, because Hollywood costs 3. So because of Hollywood's extra advancement tokens that they were able to put on Mazvingo because they advanced Hollywood, I think that really kept Freedom out. I don't know, though. So, follow this line of play. Kumalo didn't try to get in here for one reason. He was afraid of the casting call. Because if he gets the agenda when casting call is on it, the Corp could trash his resources. I suppose the Corp could also boom him or something weird like that, but I don't think Kumal is afraid of that. Like, aside from boom, if SSO is running a high-profile target, that's going to deal 4 meat damage, which wouldn't kill him. The only thing that would kill him is boom. And Kamala had a pretty good idea what was in HQ. He had accessed Mazvingo. He knew Mazvingo was in HQ. He also accessed Mazvingo again. So either he accessed Mazvingo twice, or there are 2 Mazvingos in HQ. And he wanted to make sure he had 2 clicks when he ran this server so that he could remove the tags. But I posit that probably what he should have done is ran HQ, ran HQ, ran HQ, and then ran the remote. Because he knows SSO can't afford to res this piece of ice. Also, SSO is down to 2 credits. So even if on the next turn SSO wanted to trash Kumala's virus breeding ground, which would hurt, don't get me wrong, but it would not be the end of the world. He would go down to 0 credits. So he started this turn out with 4 on Musazi, 2 on Yusuf, and 2 on virus breeding ground. So that's 2, 4, 8. We know he needs 9 to break the subs, and he needs 3 more to match the strength of Asteroid Belt. So a total of 12 credits, or 12 virus tokens, and he has 8. So if he runs HQ, runs HQ, runs HQ, he'll actually have 2 more virus tokens than he even needs. And the thing is I think what he should do is when he runs HQ those 3 times, he should be looking for boom. Or even a high-profile target, if that's what he's afraid of. So he runs HQ, he can choose to trash something with his Kumalo trigger if it's 2 virus tokens or less, and then having essentially 14 virus tokens at that point, could run this server, grab the Hollywood, and probably be safe. Because even if SSO high profile targets him, he lives. Like the worst thing that SSO probably would have done is just pay 2 to trash virus breeding grounds and then be down to 0 credits. In fact, Kumalo could have even hippoed the Asteroid Belt when he comes in here, making it that much harder for SSO to score anything. Yeah, I think running HQ is good. Well, and Knobkree gives him another virus counter. Okay, so I probably did the math wrong. He probably started this turn with 7 virus counters, not 8. But Knobcree gives him an extra one anyway. Oh well. Yeah, running that wormhole is a pain because now he can't get into R&D, and he didn't have enough clicks to... That might have been his plan, actually. So I shouldn't be too hard. He might have been thinking, okay, I'll run R&D, and then I'll run the remote. Yeah, in fact, that's probably what he was planning on doing. But of course, since Wormhole is going to end the run, he can't get the 2 extra virus tokens. Well, no, because if he had 2 extras, would he have had enough? He would have had 7, 10, 12. Yeah, it would have been just enough to get in. Oh well. Good try, Kamalo. Take a look at GameNet versus 419. 419's pretty strong. Actually, I was reading up some of the users and just the normal Genteki chat were complaining about how they were so tired of playing against 419 because he was so good. I think GameNet could give 419 a run for his money, though. They're both going to try to force each other to lose money. GameNet installs a piece of ice on HQ, doesn't pay to prevent the revelation that it is free to play. Free to play is interesting because you never need a breaker to break it. But if you're playing as GameNet and the runner breaks free to play with free to play's pay 2 credits to break a subroutine on this card, you gain 2 credits from it. GameNet ices all the central servers, preparing probably for that Amakua play. 419 installs Rizeki, a pad tap, and passes back over. GameNet double clicks for credits and trashes pad tap, says get that out of here. In response, 419 bravados the piece of ice on R&D, which is a slot machine. It reveals event resource, so the corp gains 3 credits, the runner loses 3 credits. A mining accident is dropped on the table. Corp does not have enough money to fight that. So 419 is going to get that bad pub for the rest of the game, which is pretty good for 419, but not unwinnable for GameNet. Again, they're prepping for the long game. You kind of have to against 419. 419 really grinds the game out and just keeps the corp poor. But if you can prevent 419 from getting into the centrals, he can't charge up Amakua, and he has to play the game more honestly. 419 on his next turn just installs a Day of the Cast. Back to GameNet, we're seeing 3 pieces of ice dropped on the table, and GameNet is playing very intelligently against 419 because you're incentivized to install multiple things all at once against 419. GameNet allows the first piece of ice they installed to be exposed. It is a gold farmer. But those other 2 pieces of ice they install, they don't have to worry about spending anything to prevent an exposure. Now, a piece of ice on archives is revealed to be a pop-up window, and a new unknown card is installed in the double ice remote. There's a lot of ice on the table, but surely GameNet does not have the money to res it all. 419 takes a setup turn and installs a Rizeki and Amakua. I'm a little surprised the falsified credentials didn't come out of 419. GameNet double advances the card in server 1 and then passes back over to 419. 419 now has the option of response. They play a bravado, click 1 on the remote. They certainly have the money to do it. Free-to-play is revealed. 419 will easily be able to break that with free-to-play's own ID ability. Of course, they'll pass 2 credits back over to the corp to do it, but the corp spent 4 credits to res free-to-play, so essentially free-to-play red. Corp spends 2, the runner loses 4. And Gold Farmer is the ice That's interesting, because I believe the corp revealed that gold farmer way back up here. Let's check that. I'm pretty sure they did. Anyway, 419 runs into that gold farmer and bounces, but they still get the bravado money. They keep going. They install turning wheel and make a run on HQ and bounce into a turnpike, which that on-encounter ability is going to force the runner to lose a credit, and then they're going to, GameNet is going to gain a credit, essentially making turnpike only cost 1 to res. Also fires that trace 5 to give the runner a tag. 409 shakes the tag after the run, and they ran into an archived memories in HQ. More importantly, gaining a counter on Amakua and turning wheel counter. GameNet, looking a little poor, clicks for 3 credits, passes it back over to 419. 419 draws up and finds a hunting grounds, which is going to be very useful against turnpike. Meanwhile, GameNet triple advances the already double advance card in the server, revealing it to be an SSL. Very good. They're going to gain some money back over time. That's going to be very helpful. 409, however, is going to take advantage of the fact that the corp is poor at this time. And Hunting Grounds turns off Turnpike's ability. He breaks Turnpike with Bugalter for 3 credits, gaining 2 credits back. So essentially, 419's getting in here for 1 credit. They see a red herrings, they trash red herrings. It is going to still gain a turning wheel counter, but not an Amakua counter. Corp gains 3 from SSL, takes a credit for their first basic action, another credit, and another credit. Probably smart, they just need the money to res ice on HQ right now. That turnpike is no longer cutting it. 419 can get through it for a single credit. 419 takes a setup turn, draw a couple cards, install Kadi, and click Kadi. Back over to GameNet, they're still rolling in that SSL dough. Gaining 3 from that, installing a new card, preventing the exposure of it from 419, and double advance. Back to 419, still gaining those 2 credits from Rizeki, falsified credentials, the SSL in the remote, guessing agenda, it is an agenda. So they're gaining even more money, and they're going to stim hack into the remote. 419 is crazy rich, and just taking more and more money. 5 credits from stim hack is going to break free to play. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it was broken with Bugalter. And then Gold Farmer is going to be broken with Amakua, stealing that SSL, and not losing any real tempo or credits whatsoever. They pitched an Amakua from the brain damage, doesn't matter. They already have their Amakua installed, and they install a pad tab. GameNet immediately trashes the pad tab and clicks up for 2 credits. And the reason that they have to trash these pad tabs is because anytime they gain money from their own ID ability and pad tap is on the table, 419 is going to gain money from pad tap. 419 draws up, clicks Kadi, trashes a not needed Paragon. Back to GameNet, they gain 6 credits from the 2 SSL triggers, install a new piece of ice on the remote. They pay a credit to prevent it from being exposed. Again, I've said this before, but that's more than likely to prevent Amakua from gaining counter, more so than trying to hide information from 419. Hiding info from 419 is certainly useful, but preventing the Amakua counter, more useful still. They also install a new piece of ice on HQ. We haven't seen any of 419's diversion of funds. Now, of course, it's not guaranteed 419 is running diversion of funds, but you have to assume he is. He has 27 credits. It's a crazy amount of money. Runs the slot machine. Slot machine essentially is a blank piece of ice because of hunting grounds. So R&D is a free run. They access a card in R&D, but it doesn't matter. Passing it back over to GameNet. GameNet draws, installs a new piece of ice on R&D, knowing, essentially, that slot machine is a blank card at this point. Now, hopefully we see the correct interaction between MCA, Informant, and Cotty this time. GameNet MCA's Cotty. Now 419 has to choose whether or not they want to lose the Cotty money or prevent themselves from being tagged. No, there it is. That must be a new rule change, because this guy also took the Cotty money and trashed Cotty. Huh. It used to not be like that. Yeah, look, even this guy says you can only do one of them. Yeah. Again, this used to be the old way that Cotty worked with MCA informants. The only reason I'm second guessing whether or not that's true is because I don't know if they came out with a new rule. If Nisei came out with a new rule that overwrites this, but I'm if they're playing by the old way, or if there is no rule, then the correct way. Essentially, yeah, Cotty, okay, and they are changing the game state to represent this. Cotty can't have the money taken from her and be trashed with MCA. So 419 goes ahead and loses the money. Very sporting of them not to fight about it or get angry about it or anything like that. Pardon me. And they install an Amina, so they're close to having the full rig on the table. GameNet installs a new card in a remote and advances it once. 419 falsified credentials it and guesses agenda, but they are incorrect. It is an asset, reversed accounts, taunting 419, saying, I'm going to make you lose all your money if you don't come in here and get this. 419 wants to make sure that doesn't happen. Encounters the IP block. Now the IP block has an anti-AI on encounter ability that gives the runner a tag. However, Hunting Grounds prevents that. So he breaks IP block with Amakua, breaks free to play, breaks Gold Farmer, all of this being able to be broken very cheaply with Amakua. Gets into the server. He's going to have to pay 3 credits to trash reversed accounts, but he gains a credit back from Paragon. Still a good move from GameNet. Force some action out of the runner, forced him to get in there and do things, and here comes the purge. GameNet knows now is the time. He has the money to res the ice on centrals, and 419 was getting to a point where Amakua was getting out of control. 419 sure gambles and throws a Citadel Sanctuary down on the table that's going to help him remove tags, should he get any. GameNet archive memories the reverse account, puts a new card in server 1 and advances it. 419 reveals now that he does indeed run Diversion of Funds, and Diversion of Funds HQ on clicks 1 and 2. The outermost piece of ice on HQ is revealed to be an IP block. Very good response to Hunting Grounds and Omakua and just the whole general setup. So, Hunting Grounds used on IP block, but can't be used on Turnpike since it can only be used once per turn. So, he loses a credit, GameNet gains a credit, Bugalter breaks free to play, and the diversion of funds comes through true, which is going to steal 5 from GameNet and give 5 back to 419. Falsified Credentials is played guessing asset on the reversed accounts in the server, gaining 419 hedge funds worth of money. GameNet takes 2 credits in hedge funds. They don't really want to mess around with using reversed accounts right now. At this point, it's just as good for them if 419 wastes the time to come in and trash it, which 419's going to do. Hunting Grounds, again, preventing IP Block's ability. It's more than likely that 419 isn't going to make a second run this turn, since they won't get to fire Hunting Grounds again. But they should still be able to get in here, honestly. Although, yeah, Gold Farmer is... oh, only 1 strength. So it can still be broken with Omakua. How did he break the IP block? Did they just let the trace fire? Yeah. So the trace was fired on IP block. Free to play was broken with Bugalter. And Gold Farmer was broken with Omakua. But of course, every time subroutines on Gold Farmer are broken, the runner loses an additional credit, which in turn gains GameNet a credit. So even though 419 was able to get in there and trash the reversed accounts, it still sets 419 back. And 419 is slowly losing steam here. Slowly losing steam. They're not going to be able to keep up this money forever. GameNet installs a new card in the remote they had previously on the turn before put a 4th piece of ice in front of. They take a credit and then they IPO. And they're going to have enough money now to fight off 419. 419 wants to contest the card in server 1. They have to fight through the 3 pieces of ice again on top of this new mystery piece of ice. Might be better if 419 goes elsewhere at this point. Perhaps R&D, perhaps archives, although that's exactly what GameNet wants. It's more than likely that the card in server 1 is an agenda, but all 3 of 419's falsified credentials are gone. So no more being able to guess what's in there and seeing it. It is certainly tough for 419 in this position. It's been a while since I've seen 419 have this much trouble. He tends to be a pretty oppressive runner, making it so that the corp just constantly loses money, isn't able to res their ice, and slowly just drowns to the Omakua counters that keep getting piled up and piled up and piled up, and then being run on servers with ice they can't afford to res. I'd have to say, though, at this point, GameNet seems to be getting the better end of these exchanges. Early on, it was certainly 419 favored, but after the purge came down, GameNet's been in a pretty good spot. The 419 has to decide whether or not they want to try for that card in server 1 or go somewhere else. He installs and overwrites his Omakua. Probably because of the interaction with IP block. The fact that it kept consuming the Hunting Grounds trigger was pretty annoying. So he overwrites Omakua, and it installs a Corroder, so he's a real runner now. Runs into IP block, breaks it with Corroder. Uses Turnpike on, Hunting Grounds on Turnpike. Breaks the free to play. And to make all this better, it was a diversion of funds run. So he gets paid 5 credits, and the Corp loses 5 credits. Although, is it enough? 419 down to 8 credits. Well, the Corp down to 13, but the problem is it just doesn't matter. 13 is still a healthy amount of money to have in this situation. Corp draws a card after their mandatory draw, puts an upgrade on HQ. Now, what on earth could that be? It is a Chrysium Grid. They don't fight the exposure from 419, so the Chrysium Grid is revealed, which means that if another HQ targeting run event goes through, the Corp can always choose to say no. That doesn't happen by preventing the run from being successful. Well, 419 has already played 2 diversion of funds. The only other things I would be afraid of are things like embezzle, or perhaps the 3rd diversion of funds, although it's very expensive for 419 to get in here. Well, not very expensive, but it's not free, that's for sure. So 419 tries to run RMD. It had been previously iced by a 3rd unknown piece of ice by the Corp. That 3rd ice is Slot Machine. .419 Hunting Grounds, the Slot Machine. There we are. They apparently had to manually trigger the Slot Machine interaction with Hunting Grounds. 419 immediately jacks out and takes some more money. I think they just wanted to see what the Corp had. It was free to try with Hunting Grounds. The Corp takes 2 more credits and puts another new card in the remote. So you have to assume 2 upgrades, an asset and an upgrade, or an agenda and an upgrade. We've only seen 2 agendas so far. GameNet runs a standard 45 size deck, I believe. Yeah, with 2 extra influence. So it's quite possible that the card in server 1 is an agenda. The runner asks for a moment to think again. They have bumped back up to 17 credits, so they do have enough money to get in probably anywhere they need. But they still have to do this wisely. This is overall has been a very good game from both sides. 419 having the know-how to overwrite his own Amakua to prevent the IP block triggers. GameNet having the patience and the reserves to slowly build up this massive set of servers to keep 419 out. 419 reveals that they run Boomerang, and they Boomerang free to play. They run into IP block, break IP block for 3. Turnpike's on encounter ability is turned off, and broken with Bugalter for a meager 3 credits, a net of 1 credit after Bugalter's refund. The Boomerang going to break both free-to-play subs for the 2 credits and the install. Chrysium Grid is rezzed. which prevents... Well, what does Chrysium Grid even do here? Why was Chrysium Grid res? It looks like the runner meant to use turning wheel counters but didn't. But he says, no, it's okay. I will just take my access. And that's fair because, you know, the information he obtained from running HQ might have changed his decisions. He says it's okay. He's not going to use the turning wheel counters. Now, the res on the Chrysium Grid, what did that actually do? It doesn't stop the turning wheel from gaining counters, because that just needs a run on R&D or HQ to end. The only thing it would have prevented is... No, it wouldn't even prevent Amakua. Yeah, I think the res on the Chrysium Grid was a mistake. Unless GameNet was afraid of Apocalypse. You know, that might have been it. He might have put that on HQ and resed it to prevent the Apocalypse. On the off chance that 419 runs it, he could then run this remote, run archives, and trash the whole thing. In response, on the next turn, after 419's HQ run, GameNet installs another new card in Server 1 and another new piece of ice, bringing the total piece of ice on that remote up to 5, 2 of them unresed on the outermost sections. Back to 419, he bravados R&D. Running in a slot machine. One of those slot machines is Hunting Grounds. The other slot machine reveals event resource, which is then broken with a Mina, forcing the Corp to lose a single credit. 419 going for the deep dig, spending 6 turning wheel counters to access a total of 4 cards. He sees Echo Chamber, Bologna, and that's that. He trashes the Echo Chamber and steals the Bologna, paying 5 to do so and gaining 7, 8, 9 credits back on Bravado, so a total of 6 credits. Not too bad at all. And 419 is on game point. In spite of his success on that R&D run, he decides he's going to go run HQ. Breaks IP block with Corroder and then jacks out. Now, why he did this, I'm not sure, because he then stim hacks R&D. The only thing I can think of is he's going in for another R&D dig? But why? He already saw those cards. This can't be an Apocalypse run. He's running R&D again. He spent the turning wheel counters to access more cards from R&D. Oh. Okay. So in that run where he hit all of those cards off of R&D with turning wheel, 2 of them were Bologna, but he only had the money to steal 1 of them. So he runs the IP block and then jacks out. And he does that so that he can have the turning wheel counter he needs to access the Bologna that he already accessed. Stim hacks to get the money. Rolls in and steals the Bologna. Not too bad. How much does it cost for a Mina to break slot machine? Wow, only 4 credits. Pretty cheap. How did he get the money to do that, though? Let's see here. Oh, of course, the money that came back from Bravado. So you got the money back from Bravado on top of the stim hack money. And that won him the game. That was actually pretty close. I mean, that could have just as easily whiffed, and 419 might have only gotten one agenda off of that R&D run, or not had the money to go back in and steal the second Bologna. GameNet, I think, was playing like pretty good, especially with the reverse accounts play. The way he kept teasing 419 to come in here, kept teasing 419 saying, you know, here's the reversed accounts. Either you trash it and spend a bunch of money to get in here, or it stays in there and then I get to make you lose money whenever I want. I don't know what was going on here with these face down cards. It looks like the corp reveals that it was a Bologna, red herrings, and the two ice on the remote are Gold Farmer and IP Block. So, with Corroder, IP Block can be broken for 4 credits. So it would have been 4 credits, 8. Bugalter... Had Bugalter been used? No. I don't think Bugalter had been used yet. So Bugalter would have broken free to play for 4 credits. So another 4. So 4, 8, 12. Plus another Gold Farmer, which would have been another 2 credits minus 1 each for the whenever a subroutine is broken. So they all would have been 4. Would have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20 credits. Plus the red herrings. Plus 5 on credits on top of red herrings forces 5 credits to be spent. Would have been a ridiculous amount of money. Like, maybe 419 had the money to do it with stim hack. Anyway, that one was a pretty good one to end on. So I think we're gonna end there. A lot to really look at in this game. I think this was both players playing very well, both players making great choices, fighting that economy game. This was 2 sides that both wanted control of the economy. And to GameNet's credit, they never reached a point where they were just dead broken out. They always had money. They always had the threat to res things, to keep the runner out. They were running a little low here at the end when they only had 3 credits, but yeah, just in general, I think they were playing how they had to. They were playing well, and so was 419. So, anyway, thank you for watching. That was a nice little diversion. And perhaps I'll see you on the next one when we analyze more Netrunner games. So, I'll see you then.